My dear friend, let me tell you something I wish somebody told me many years ago. Life will test you in ways you do not expect. It will push you when you are tired. It will stretch you when you feel empty. And sometimes the people who look powerful will try to make you feel small. I learned that the hard way. And before I tell you my name, before I tell you what happened, I want to warn you, because I do not want you to make the same mistakes I made. My dear friend, have you ever felt like your whole life could change in one day? Have you ever opened a letter and your hands began to shake because you already knew the news was bad before reading it? Have you ever asked yourself what you would do if everything you worked for was suddenly at risk? If it was you, what would you do? Would you fight? Would you run? Would you keep quiet? Or would you stand up even when your legs were weak? I asked myself all of these questions, and for a long time I did nothing. That was my first mistake. I trusted the wrong people. I believed that being quiet would keep me safe. I believed that being old meant I had no right to speak. I believed that when someone with money and power pushed me, I had no choice but to fall. I was wrong, and I do not want you to ever think that way. But my dear friend, before I go on, let me tell you something important. If you are watching this right now, take a moment to subscribe, like, and comment. Tell me where you are watching from. I want to know you're part of the country. I want you to join this family of people who learn from stories and grow stronger every day. Now let me continue. I live in a small, quiet suburb in the United States. It is peaceful. There are wide lawns and little houses with wooden fences. People walk their dogs. Some grow tomatoes in their backyards. Others sit on porches with cold lemonade. It is the kind of place where the wind carries memories. But even in a calm place, storms can come without warning. For many years, I lived in a simple one-story rental home on a small street near a row of tall pine trees. The house was old, but it felt warm. The paint was fading, but I had filled it with love. I had lived there long enough to know which floorboards creaked and which windows whistled in the winter. I had planted flowers in the front yard. I knew every neighbor by name. And I thought that when I grew older, I would finish my quiet days right there. But life does not always follow our plans. One cold morning, I opened my mailbox and found a long white envelope with my landlord's name on it. My heart sank. I did not know why. I just felt that something inside it was going to change everything. When I walked inside and sat at my kitchen table, my hands were shaking. The morning sun was shining across the table, falling on the letter like a spotlight. I took a deep breath and opened it. It was a rent hike, a big one, bigger than any raise a person my age could handle. But that was not all. At the bottom was something that made my stomach twist. It said that if I could not pay the new amount, I had to leave the house. I had 30 days. 30 days, after years of living there, after planting flowers and memories, after giving everything to build a peaceful life. 30 days to pack up my whole life. 30 days to disappear like I never lived there at all. My dear friend, I felt my chest tighten. I felt tears burning in my eyes, and the worst part was not the letter. The worst part was how powerless I felt. I looked at my hands. They were old. They were shaking. And for a moment I believed that maybe I could not fight this. Maybe I was too weak. Maybe I did not matter. And that was my second mistake. Because weakness is not in the bones. Weakness is not in the age. Weakness is in the mind. And sometimes all it takes is one moment, one spark, one small piece of courage to change everything. At first I did nothing. For 2 days I sat in my living room staring at the letter on my coffee table. I kept thinking about how I was alone, how my family had drifted away, how the few children I helped raise years ago now had their own lives and barely called, how the world moved faster every year while I moved slower. And I asked myself again, if it was you, what would you do? But then something happened, something small, something quiet, something that changed the entire path of my life. On the third day, I noticed something strange near the mailbox outside. A small wooden post, old, weathered, leaning, and suddenly something in my mind clicked, something I had never thought about before. I walked inside and pulled out the rent notice again. I read it slowly. I read every word. And then a thought came into my head, a thought so wild I almost laughed at myself. What if the landlord was wrong? What if there was something he had overlooked? What if the law was not on his side like he pretended? What if I had more power than I realized? What if the land under my feet had rules he had ignored? My dear friend, I had no idea that this tiny thought would lead me to a discovery so powerful that it would shake the courtroom weeks later. I had no idea that it would send the landlord into silence. I had no idea that it would bring a judge to lean forward in interest. I had no idea that it would change the ending of my story. But it started right there. With one thought. With one question. With one quiet moment. And as I stood there, with the letter in my hand and fear in my chest, I knew something was coming. Something big. Something I was not ready for but could not run from. Something that would test every part of me. Something that would make me stronger than I ever knew I could be. Because I was about to face a fight I never asked for. And the landlord had no idea that he had just awakened the wrong old woman. But my dear friend, let me tell you how it all began. When I pulled that letter closer and read it again, I noticed something I had missed before. A detail. A mistake. A clue. And once I saw it, everything changed. Everything. My dear friend, I want you to sit with me for a moment and imagine this scene. Early morning light, a quiet house, a soft chill in the air, and me, a woman who thought life had finally slowed down, standing at my kitchen table and staring at a letter that felt heavier than any storm I had lived through. I thought I was too old for surprises, too old for trouble, too old for someone to shake my world the way that Landlord did. But trouble does not ask for your age. It does not knock. It just walks in. And that morning, I knew trouble had found me. I sat down, pressed the paper flat with my hands, and tried to understand. The landlord had raised the rent so high that even a young working person would struggle. And I was 92 years old living on a fixed retirement check that had not grown in years. My hands trembled as I read the line that told me to leave the home I had known for so long. My dear friend, I felt my heart sink. I felt tired all over again. I felt like the world outside was running ahead and I could not keep up. And for a while, I just sat there listening to the clock tick on the wall. Every tick felt like a countdown. Every sound felt like it was pushing me out of the place I loved. But let me tell you something. Sometimes we find strength in moments we never expect. I kept reading the letter again and again. It felt unfair. It felt like someone had decided I was too old to fight back. Like someone thought my age meant I would just give up. But deep inside, something was waking up, something small, something stubborn, something brave, something that had been quiet for many years. I stood up and opened the window, hoping fresh air would clear my mind. From the window I could see the street I had lived on for decades. The little houses, the tall pine trees, the children riding bikes, the mailman walking quickly from home to home. Everything looked the same, but my life felt different now, like the ground under me had shifted. Then I remembered the strange thing I had seen near the mailbox the day before. The old wooden post leaning to the side. It was worn out, almost hidden by the grass. It looked like something very old, something forgotten, and it made my mind start turning in a direction I had never turned before. Why was that post there? What did it mean? Who put it? How long ago? Was it on my side of the property, or the landlord's side? Did it mark something important? My dear friend, these were not questions I usually asked. But the moment the landlord tried to push me out, my mind suddenly wanted answers. It wanted truth. It wanted something to hold on to. So I grabbed my old coat, stepped outside, and walked carefully toward the mailbox. The morning was cool. The grass was wet with dew. I could smell the pine trees in the distance, and when I reached the post, I touched it with my hand. It felt rough, old but strong. It had been there longer than anything else on that street. And something inside me told me it mattered. I leaned closer and saw faint numbers carved into the wood. They were almost gone, but they were still there. Why would a post on my property have numbers carved on it? What were they used for? Were they part of a boundary line? That was when I felt a small spark inside me, a spark of curiosity, a spark of courage. A spark that said maybe the landlord did not know everything he claimed to know. Maybe I had more rights than I thought. Maybe I could fight, not with force, but with knowledge. My dear friend, at 92 years old, I decided to go to war with wisdom. I walked back inside, sat down in my living room, and stared at the bookshelf that had been collecting dust for years. I had old cookbooks, old magazines, a few family photo albums, and then on the bottom shelf I noticed something I had forgotten about completely. It was a thin box filled with old papers, letters, and documents from when I first moved into the house. My heart started beating faster. Could there be something important in there, something the landlord did not know, something that could help me stay? I pulled the box out, set it on the floor, and opened it. The papers were yellow from age. Some smelled like the past. Some were written by people who were no longer alive. But I kept searching through them, hoping to find something that would make sense of it all. Then I found it. A folded paper with a small map. The map had lines and shapes and numbers. It showed the land around my home. It showed where the property lines were supposed to be, and that old wooden post outside matched the lines on the map. The landlord had made a mistake, a big one, a mistake that could change everything. My dear friend, I felt something awaken inside me, something strong, something steady. I whispered to myself, "So this is not over." Not even close. And for the first time since reading that terrible letter, I smiled. I knew I had work to do. I knew I needed to learn. I knew I needed information. So I did something I never thought I would do at 92 years old. I put on my shoes, took the bus to the small town library, and walked straight to the legal section. The librarian, a young woman with bright eyes, looked surprised to see me there. She asked if I needed help. I told her I wanted books about tenant rights, property laws, zoning laws, and eviction rules. She blinked twice and then guided me to a shelf full of books I had never looked at before. I sat down with the books and began to read. Slowly, carefully. Sometimes my eyes hurt, sometimes my hands shook, but I kept going. Page after page, rule after rule, law after law. I was not reading to become a lawyer. I was reading to survive. I was reading to save the home I loved. And in those books, I found something shocking. Something that changed the direction of the whole fight. Something that the landlord should have known, but ignored. Something that could stop the eviction completely. The rent hike was not legal. Not because it was too high, but because of the zoning rule connected to that old wooden post. My dear friend, at that moment, I felt a kind of strength I had not felt in years. The kind of strength that comes when you realize you are not powerless. The kind of strength that comes when knowledge enters the mind and pushes fear out. I took notes. I copied pages. I wrote down important words in simple language I could understand later. I stayed so long that the librarian brought me water and crackers. She told me she was proud of me. Her words made me feel 10 years younger. When I finally returned home, it was already dark. The street lights were glowing. The air felt cold. But my heart felt warm because I knew something the landlord did not know. This fight was not going to be easy. But I was not alone. I had the truth on my side. The next morning, I heard footsteps outside. When I opened the door, the landlord was standing on the porch with a smug smile on his face. He thought he had already won. He thought I would beg. He thought I would cry. He thought he could scare me with his power. But he did not know what I had learned. He did not know the fire he had awakened. He did not know that I was about to turn his world upside down with nothing but old wisdom and a piece of paper he never expected me to find. He handed me another notice. This one was louder, stronger, confident, as if he believed he had every right to push me out. But my dear friend, I looked him straight in the eye and said the calmest words I had ever spoken in my life. I said, I understand your notice, but you should understand something too. This is not over. Not for me. Not today. He laughed, but I did not, because I knew something he did not know. Something big. Something that would shake him later. Something that would make him question everything. And when he walked away thinking he had already won, I stood at my door, holding the notice, holding the truth, and holding the strength I had earned all on my own. But my dear friend, let me tell you what happened that night. When I went inside and turned on the light, I noticed something in the corner of the room. Something I had forgotten. Something I should have thrown away years ago. But now it was sitting there quietly, waiting for me. And when I picked it up, my whole body froze. Because inside that old object was a secret that would change everything even more. A secret that could decide the entire case. A secret the landlord never saw coming. A secret that could save my home forever. My dear friend, let me take you back to that night. The night when the house felt too quiet. The night when the wind outside made the old windows shake. The night when I walked into my living room and something in the corner caught my eye. Something I had forgotten about. something that had waited for years without being touched. It was a small wooden chest. Old. Scratched. Covered with dust that looked like soft gray snow. I had not opened that chest in decades. It belonged to my late husband before he passed away many years ago. I kept it because I could not let it go, even though I never had the courage to open it again after he was gone. Sometimes memories are heavier than stones. Sometimes they sit quietly in the corner of a room waiting for the right moment to breathe again. But that night, something inside me said, "It is time. Open it. There is something inside you need." My heart beat slowly as I walked toward the chest. The room felt colder. The house felt older. The air felt still. I knelt down, brushed away the dust, and touched the lid. My hands trembled, not from age this time, but from fear of what memories would rise. When I lifted the lid, the smell of old paper filled the room. It smelled like the past. It smelled like forgotten hope. Inside, I found letters tied with faded ribbon, old photos, and documents my husband had kept from the early years of our life. I felt tears form in my eyes. I whispered his name softly, as if he could hear me. But then something strange caught my attention. At the bottom of the chest was a rolled paper held with a tiny strip of cloth. It looked older than everything else, older than even our wedding photos. I reached for it slowly, almost afraid of what I would find. When I unrolled it, my breath caught in my throat. It was a property survey. Hand-drawn. Precise. Signed by a man whose handwriting looked like a careful dance. And on that survey was a boundary line much different from the one the landlord used today. A line that placed that old wooden post exactly where I had seen it. A line that proved something powerful. My dear friend, I realized my little home sat on a protected zone. A zone that had special rules. A zone that had limits the landlord had ignored. A zone that could stop the eviction. I held the paper close to my chest. It felt warm in my hands. It felt like the truth I needed had waited for me in that chest all these years. And I felt a sudden strength inside me. The kind of strength you get when the past and the present join hands. The kind of strength that comes when love guides you even after years of silence. I whispered, "Thank you," to my husband, as if he had planned this all along. But my dear friend, I knew this paper was not enough. I knew that even with this proof, the landlord would not give up. People do not turn back easily when they smell money. Some fight harder when they think they have power. And I knew he would not stop until the court made him stop. So I sat down, placed the survey gently on my table, and decided what to do next. That night, the house held two kinds of silence. The silence of the past, sitting inside that wooden chest, and the silence of the future, waiting for me to choose what kind of woman I would be. Would I be the kind who gives up? Or the kind who stands her ground, even when her bones ache? My dear friend, I chose to stand. I stayed awake reading the survey again and again. I checked it against the notes I took at the library. I matched it with the old map from the box. I could feel pieces lining up like a puzzle finally coming together. I realized something important. The landlord was counting on my fear. He was counting on my age. He was counting on me staying quiet. He was counting on me not knowing the law. But he was wrong. The next morning, the sun rose slowly through the blinds. The light fell across the documents, making the lines glow. It felt like the house was waking up with purpose. I made myself a cup of warm tea, held it close, and thought about everything that had happened. The rent hike, the eviction notice, the library trip, the wooden post, the old chest, the survey. Every piece fit together. Every clue pointed to one truth. I had a case, and the landlord had no idea. I decided to visit the town office that day. The building was old with red bricks and large windows. People walked in and out holding papers and files. I walked up to the counter and asked for help. The woman behind the desk was kind and patient. She asked me for the address of my home. I gave it to her. She typed it into the computer. After a moment, she frowned. Then she typed again. Then she looked at me differently. She said, "Mom, your property falls under a special zoning code. It was marked years ago. It limits rent increases. It protects senior tenants. Your landlord should have known this." My dear friend, my heart almost stopped. I knew I had found something important, but hearing it from her made it real. She printed out the zoning papers. She highlighted the sections I needed. She gave me the law number. She even wrote down the name of a legal help center that supported elderly tenants for free. I thanked her with tears in my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but tears of hope. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was not alone. I walked outside into the cold air with the papers in my hand. The wind felt stronger. The sky looked brighter. Even the street felt different. It felt like the world had opened a small door just for me. That afternoon, I organized everything on my kitchen table. The old survey, the zoning rules, my notes from the library, the rent notice, the eviction threat. They formed a shield made of truth, a shield made of courage, a shield that an old woman like me could hold without fear. Then something happened that I did not expect. There was a knock on my door. A sharp, loud knock. A knock that carried tension. A knock that made my heart skip. I walked to the door slowly and opened it. Standing there was someone I had not seen in many years. Someone from my past. Someone who once cared about me but later walked away when life got complicated. Someone who had secrets I thought I would never hear again. He looked at me with eyes full of worry. And the first words he said were, "I heard what the landlord is trying to do. And there is something I need to tell you. Something about the house. Something I should have told you a long time ago." My dear friend, let me take you back to that moment. The moment when my past walked right up to my front door and knocked loud enough to shake the dust from the walls. I stood there with the cold air touching my face and the warm papers in my hand. I was ready to fight the landlord. I was ready to defend my home, but I was not ready for the man standing before me. His name was Alden, a man I once trusted. A man who knew my husband long ago. A man who disappeared from our lives when things got difficult. I had not seen him since the early years after my husband passed. He left town without a word. And now, after all these years, he stood at my door with his hat in his hands and sorrow in his eyes. My dear friend, I did not know whether to let him in or tell him to leave. Old emotions can still sting the heart even after decades, but something in his face told me this was not a random visit. Something heavy sat on his shoulders, something he had carried for too long. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Come in," I said softly. He walked inside like he was stepping into a memory. He looked around the small living room, at the cracks in the walls, at the old pictures, at the furniture that had watched me grow older. He sighed, and it was not a normal sigh. It was the kind that carries regret. He sat down slowly. His hands trembled slightly. He looked at me and said, "I should have come sooner. I should have told you everything." My dear friend, those words hung in the air like a storm cloud waiting to burst. I asked him what he meant. He rubbed his forehead and looked down at the floor. He said, "I know about the landlord, and I know something about this house. Something your husband asked me to protect." My heart stopped for a moment. My breath grew thin. I felt the room tilt in silence. For years I thought my husband took all his secrets with him. For years I thought the wooden chest held everything he left behind. But now Alden was telling me there was more. Something hidden. Something he kept secret for a reason. I asked Alden to explain. He looked at me with tired eyes. Eyes that once held confidence, but now held sorrow. He began to speak slowly. He told me that my husband, before he passed away, discovered a mistake in the property records. A mistake that would later make the zoning rules even stronger. A mistake that could protect our home forever. But he feared the landlord at that time. And he feared the town would try to take advantage of an old couple with limited strength. So he trusted Alden with the truth. He trusted him with papers. He trusted him with a promise. But Alden left town before he could return the documents. Life pulled him away. Family issues. Money problems. Decisions he regretted every day. I listened in silence. My hands grew cold. My heart pounded slowly. Then Alden reached into his coat. He pulled out an envelope. Old. Soft. Yellow. Like it had traveled through time to reach me. He placed it on the table between us. He whispered, "I kept this safe for years. I was too ashamed to come back. But when I heard about your eviction, I knew I could not hide anymore. You deserve the truth. Your husband wanted you to have this. He wanted you to be protected." My dear friend, I stared at that envelope like it held the sun. I could feel my hands shaking. I could feel past and present merging. I could feel the weight of years pressing against me. I opened it slowly. Inside were two things. A handwritten letter from my husband, and a document with a town seal, older than any paper I had held in years. The letter was simple, short, full of love, full of hope, full of words I had missed for so long. My dear friend, I cried. Not loud, not with sadness, but with warmth, with peace, with the kind of tears that come from remembering love. Then I opened the official document. It confirmed everything. The house sat on land with a protection zone. A zone the town established years ago to keep senior residents safe. A zone that limited rent raises. A zone that stopped sudden eviction. A zone that the landlord had completely ignored. This document was stronger than the survey. stronger than the zoning papers. It was a foundation, a shield, a final piece. Alden watched me as I read. His hands were shaking. His face looked pale. He said, "I am sorry I came so late, but I want to help you now. I want to stand with you, if you will let me." My dear friend, my heart softened. Sometimes people return broken. Sometimes they return wiser. Sometimes mistakes lead them back to the place they should have never left. I told him, "You came back. That is what matters." Alden took a deep breath, as if my words lifted a weight he had carried for years. But then something strange happened. Something I did not expect. He leaned forward and whispered, "The landlord knows more than he lets on. And he is planning something before the court date. Something that could hurt your chances. Something I must tell you." My dear friend, my stomach tightened. The air grew heavy. The room felt smaller. I asked him what he meant. But before he could open his mouth again, there was a sudden loud noise outside. A car door slammed. Footsteps rushed up to my porch. Sharp, vast, intentional. Then a hand started pounding on my door, hard enough to shake the frame. I looked at Alden. He looked at me. Fear flashed in his eyes. And outside, a voice shouted something that froze my blood cold. My dear friend, I woke up that morning with a heavy heart. The sun was shining over the quiet little suburb of Winter Haven, but inside me, it felt like a storm I had been trying to calm for weeks. I sat on the edge of my small bed inside the retirement bungalow and asked myself the same question I asked yesterday. Why did life become so hard at this age? I pressed my hands together and whispered to myself, "My dear friend, if this was happening to you, how would you stay calm? How would you keep your strength when people push you into a corner?" I wanted to stay peaceful. I wanted to hold my dignity. But trouble kept knocking. And today, trouble came with a new face. A white envelope, pushed under my door. Silent, cold, final. I bent down slowly, picked it up with shaking hands, and opened it. The words almost stole the air from my chest. 30-day eviction notice. Final warning. Failure to comply may lead to property seizure. I held the paper for so long that my fingers almost tore it. I felt the room spinning. My dear friend, do you know that feeling when someone tries to push you out of your own life? Have you ever felt like you were standing on the edge with no one to hold your hand? I whispered, "Not again. Not today." For a moment, I remembered all the choices that led me here. All the mistakes I made. All the times I stayed quiet. All the times I allowed people to walk over me because I thought keeping peace was safer than speaking. I had lived almost my entire life believing silence was protection. But silence was the reason I was standing here with an eviction notice in my hand. Then the phone rang. It was the landlord, Higgins Rowe. A tall, proud man with a voice that always sounded annoyed, even when he greeted you. He never liked elderly tenants. He always said we asked too many questions. He spoke with a tone that felt like sandpaper. Marlene, I hope you read the letter. I expect you out of the house by the end of the month. Rates are rising. You cannot stay unless you pay the new amount. I asked him softly, why are you doing this to me? Why now? Why raise the rent when you know my retirement funds are small? He sighed like I was wasting his time. It is just business. Accept it and move. Then he hung up. I stood there with the phone still in my hand. Just business. Just business. My dear friend, sometimes the words that hurt the most are simple words. Short words. Everyday words. He wanted me gone. Not because he needed the space, but because he believed I was weak. An easy target. An elderly woman. A tenant with no family close by. But he forgot something. Age does not make you weak. Experience makes you sharp. And I still had my mind. I walked to my tiny desk, pulled out all the papers I had collected over the months, and spread them out like puzzle pieces. Old rental agreements, county zoning laws, retirement home regulations, notes from the nights I studied, little facts I wrote down when I could not sleep. Then I saw it. A small line. A rule almost hidden. Zoning Class E prohibits rental property modification without county notice. Tenants must be notified 90 days in advance if zoning changes affect rent price. My breath froze. Higgins had not given me 90 days. He had given me 30. He broke the law. Not me. My dear friend, do you see how power changes when you learn? Do you see how truth becomes a shield when you read? I felt something rise inside me. Something calm. Something strong. Something I had not felt in a long time. I grabbed my walking stick, put the papers in my old leather bag, and headed outside. The wind was cold but refreshing. The neighborhood was quiet except for a dog barking far away and a teen riding past on a bike. I walked straight to the community library. My safe place. My secret weapon. Inside, the air smelled like old books and hope. I sat at my favorite wooden table, opened the law books again, and read everything slowly. Line by line. Rule by rule. Word by word. And then, halfway through reading, a young woman approached me. Her name was Marilla Crow, a junior attorney who volunteered at the library on weekends. She had kind eyes and a voice soft enough to calm wild storms. She looked at my stack of papers and asked, "Ma'am, are you studying law cases?" I smiled gently, trying to save my home. She sat down with me and looked at the eviction notice. Her eyes widened. "Who gave you this? This is wrong. This is illegal." My dear friend, hearing those words felt like someone turned on a light in a dark room. She pulled out her laptop, typed quickly, and said, "He violated zoning. He violated tenant protection. He violated senior housing law." Then she looked up at me with a brave smile. "You have a case." For the first time in weeks, I felt hope like warm sunlight on my skin. She promised to help me gather documents. She taught me how to file a complaint. She showed me how to protect myself legally. And before she left, she said something I will never forget. People think older women are easy to silence. But women your age, you carry storms they cannot imagine. When she said that, something inside me healed a little. I walked home with my head high, holding the papers tightly. But when I reached my door, another surprise waited. An SUV, parked in front of my house. Higgins stepped out, angry, impatient, ready to fight. He walked toward me with quick steps and held out another envelope. This is your final warning. If you do not leave, I will see you in court. I stared at him calmly, not shaking, not afraid. Then I opened my bag, took out the zoning violation paper, held it up to his face and said, "No, I will see you in court." His face changed. His confidence melted. His eyes widened. And for the first time, he stepped back. My dear friend, that moment reminded me, when you stand up for yourself, even the loudest bullies lose their voice. I walked inside my house, closed the door, placed the papers on the table, and whispered, "This is only the beginning." The next morning, I received a message from the courthouse. A hearing date had been set. The showdown was coming. And this time, I was not the weak one. I was the prepared one. But the night before the hearing, something happened. A knock on my door. Slow, heavy, strain. When I opened it, it was not Higgins. It was someone connected to him. Someone who held a secret. A secret about the house. A secret about the land. A secret that could change everything. A secret that could either save me or destroy the entire case. And that is where the real trouble began. That night, the world felt too quiet. The small town of Winter Haven usually hummed softly at night with crickets and faraway traffic, but now, nothing. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. I was sitting in my living room, holding my warm teacup, thinking about the court hearing coming in a few days. My heart was steady, but my thoughts were busy. I had spent nights reading laws, nights correcting my past mistakes, and nights telling myself I must not fall apart. Then, a knock. Slow, heavy, not rushed, not friendly. I froze. My dear friend, have you ever heard a knock that felt like a warning? A knock that made you hold your breath without knowing why. I stood up, walked carefully to the door, and opened it. A man I had never seen stood outside. Tall, maybe in his 40s. Wearing old jeans and a work jacket stained with paint and dust. He looked tired, like someone who carried too many secrets for too long. He held his cap in his hands and said, "Ma'am, are you Marlene?" I nodded slowly. He took a deep breath. "My name is Reddick Sloan. I used to work for Higgins." Right away the air felt heavier. I stepped aside gently and said, "Come in if you need shelter." He entered quietly, almost afraid to touch anything. He looked around my small home, the one Higgins was trying so hard to take from me, and his eyes softened, like he remembered something good, something human. We sat at the table. He didn't touch the chair at first, like he was not sure he deserved to sit. Then he whispered, "I need to tell you something before it is too late. My dear friend." I felt my heartbeat grow louder. When a stranger speaks like that, it never means something small. I asked softly, "What happened? Why are you here?" He looked down at his hands, cracked and tired from years of ranch and construction work. "I worked with Higgins when he bought this place. I know the truth about the land. I know why he wants you out so fast." I held my breath. Then he said something that felt like thunder. "This land is under historical protection. It cannot be sold. It cannot be rebuilt. It cannot be turned into a new luxury building like Higgins planned." My teacup trembled in my hand. "My dear friend, do you see how some people hide the truth when they want more money? Do you see how secrets grow like weeds when greedy people water them with lies?" I leaned closer. "Tell me everything." He nodded slowly, ashamed and exhausted. 5 years ago, the county marked this property line for historical review. They wanted to protect it because of the old farmhouse foundation behind your house. Higgins ignored it. He wanted the whole block for himself. He wanted to rebuild it and raise rent everywhere. I whispered, "So he cannot legally force me out?" Reddick shook his head. "No. And he knows that. He just hoped you would not know." I felt a wave of emotions hit me at once. Relief, anger, sadness, strength, all mixed together. Reddick continued, "I left his crew a year ago because I did not like what he was doing to old people, but I stayed quiet, and after seeing your eviction notice, I could not stay quiet anymore." He looked up with tired, honest eyes. "You deserve to know the truth. My dear friend, sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the people we never notice are the ones who carry the keys to our freedom." I whispered, thank you for your courage." He shook his head. "No, ma'am. I am late. I should have spoken earlier." I touched his hand gently. "You spoke when you could. That is enough." He gave me papers. County documents. Old survey maps. A letter he wrote months ago, but never mailed. These papers showed the truth. The land was protected. The rent increase was illegal. The eviction was illegal. The modifications Higgins planned were illegal. The retaliation toward a senior tenant was illegal. I placed the papers on my table, and the weight of the truth felt heavy and bright. Then Reddick said something that shook my soul. "Higgins does not know I am here. But he will find out. And when he does, he will try anything to stop you from using these papers." I felt a chill move across my skin. My dear friend, sometimes the truth comes with a price. A price you must be ready to pay with courage. I asked him, "Are you planning to testify?" He swallowed hard. "I am scared. But yes, you deserve someone to stand up with you." His voice cracked a little. "My mother was pushed out of her home when she got old. I couldn't save her. Maybe I can help you." The room felt warmer suddenly. I stood up and hugged him gently. He froze, then relaxed. He was a man who hadn't been shown kindness in a long time. He left after midnight, promising to return on the hearing day. But my dear friend, the story did not rest that night. Not even for a moment. Because the next morning, I woke up to footsteps outside. Vast, heavy footsteps. Voices. Whispers. I opened my curtains and looked out. A black truck. Parked across the street. Windows tinted. Engine running. My heart tightened. And then, the landlord himself, Higgins, stepped out. He looked furious. He walked straight toward my porch with a folder in his hand, his jaw tight, his eyes cold. I opened the door before he could knock. He forced a smile. "Marlene, we need to talk." I felt peace rise inside me like a shield. "Not today, Higgins." He narrowed his eyes. He stepped closer. And then he said something that revealed everything. "Someone has been speaking to you." "I want to know who." "My dear friend." That was the moment I knew the battle had truly begun. Because a man who hides secrets becomes dangerous when his secrets start slipping out. I stood firm, calm, tall in my spirit. "Higgins, I know more than you think." He froze, and for the first time, he looked scared. Not of me, but of the truth. I closed the door slowly. The hearing was coming. The truth was ready. The allies were gathering. And the storm was finally turning in my direction. But I did not know something even bigger was about to come. A betrayal. A friend who wasn't really a friend. A twist that would shake the entire case before the courtroom ever opened. And it would come from someone I trusted. Someone I never suspected. The morning after Higgins came to my porch, the sky looked heavy, like it knew something was coming. Winter Haven usually had quiet mornings, the kind where the birds woke up before the people. But that day, the air felt wrong. Thick, cold, watching me. I made my tea slowly, trying to calm my hands. I told myself, "Stay brave. Stay steady. You have come too far to fear now." But my dear friend, sometimes the danger does not come from the front door. Sometimes it comes from someone already inside your circle. Someone you thought was safe. And that is exactly what happened next. I sat down at my small wooden table and began organizing the papers Reddick gave me. Every document was a piece of truth. Every page was a shield. Every line was a step toward justice. But while I worked, something started bothering me. Small things. Very small things. Things that did not make sense at first. Like the fact that my back window was unlocked. I never left it unlocked. Or the fact that some papers on my desk were slightly moved. I placed everything perfectly the night before. Or the fact that my front gate was left open. I always closed it. My dear friend, have you ever felt watched even when no one was in the room? Have you ever felt like the walls were whispering warnings you could not understand yet? I brushed the thoughts away. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I was scared. Maybe my mind was playing tricks. But then, the betrayal revealed itself. Around noon, I heard a gentle knock on my door. Not loud, not sharp, familiar. I opened it and saw her. Aveline Moore. My neighbor. My friend. The one who always brought pies during holidays. The one who checked on me whenever I had a cough. The one who told me I reminded her of her mother. She stood there with her warm smile, holding a basket of fresh muffins. Marlene, I brought you something warm to help with your nerves. You must be stressed. I welcomed her in with a soft heart, because kindness was rare these days. And kindness from someone familiar feels like safety. She sat at my table and looked at the papers spread around. Her smile changed slightly. Very slightly. Almost too small to notice. But I noticed. She asked, "Are these for your case? Did someone help you? How much do you know?" Her questions came too fast. Too curious. Too sharp. My dear friend. Sometimes betrayal shows itself not with loud words, but with one too many questions. I tried to stay calm. Why do you want to know so much, Aveline? She laughed in a strange way. A little forced. A little shaky. Oh, no reason. I just want to help. You know I care about you. She touched one of the documents. Her eyes scanned the zoning violation page with too much interest. Then she said, "This paper, where did you get it?" My heart slowed. Something was wrong. My dear friend, sometimes the truth hides inside the tone of a single question. I asked softly, "Aveline, did someone send you here?" She froze. Completely froze. Her smile disappeared. Her eyes dropped. Her hands shook slightly. And then she whispered, "Marlene, I didn't want to do this." The room felt like it stopped breathing. I leaned back slowly. "Tell me the truth." She wiped a tear. "Higgins came to me last night. He knows you are preparing for the hearing. He said your case could ruin him. He begged me to find out how much you know. He promised me rent discounts for 1 year if I help him." My chest tightened. My dear friend, do you know how it feels when someone you trust slowly breaks your heart with their confession? I whispered, "So you came here to spy on me?" She cried harder. "Yes, but I regret it. I swear I regret it. I need money. My daughter is sick. I did not want to hurt you." Her voice trembled with guilt. But even guilt cannot erase betrayal. I closed my eyes and breathed slowly, trying to calm the storm inside my chest. I did not want to explode. I did not want anger to control me. I wanted to stay peaceful even when my heart was breaking. Aveline reached out. "Marlene, please forgive me. I am scared. I made a mistake." I nodded softly. We all make mistakes. I have made many. But this one cuts deep. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. I asked her, "Did you tell Higgins anything?" She shook her head. "Not yet. I came straight to you today. I thought maybe I could warn you. Maybe I could undo it." Her voice cracked. "He will try to destroy your case." I felt a shiver. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then whispered, "Higgins hired someone to look for the man who helped you. The man named Reddick. He wants to scare him or buy him so he will not testify. My breath caught in my throat. My dear friend, the truth always comes with danger. But danger feels bigger when someone innocent is in the line of fire. I stood up quickly. Where is Reddick now? Is he safe? Aveline shook her head. I don't know. But Higgins is desperate. He will not stop. The room felt like it tilted. I looked at the door, expecting Higgins to appear again at any moment. Aveline stood up and held my hands. Please believe me. I came here not to spy now. I came to warn you. I came to beg for forgiveness. Her tears fell onto my skin. I squeezed her hands gently. I forgive you, but I cannot trust you right now. Her face broke with sadness, but she nodded. I understand. She walked slowly to the door. Before she left, she turned and whispered, Be careful, Marlene. You are fighting someone who is afraid. And when people are afraid, they do desperate things. She closed the door behind her. The silence returned. But it was no longer peaceful. It was a warning. I walked to my table, grabbed Reddick's papers, and placed them in a safer spot. Then I locked every door, every window, every gate. I paced around my living room with a pounding heart. My dear friend, sometimes fear comes not from loud threats, but from the quiet knowledge that someone is moving behind your back. Higgins was hunting the truth. He was hunting the man who could expose him. He was hunting the documents that could destroy his case. And now, he knew I knew. I sat down and whispered to myself, You must stay calm. You must stay focused. You must stay strong. But just when I thought the day could not bring any more trouble, my phone rang. I expected Reddick, or maybe the courthouse, but the number was unknown. I answered carefully. Hello. A deep voice spoke. Marlene, we need to talk. It is about the hearing. I felt a cold sinking feeling in my stomach. And then he said something that made my heart jump. This is not just about your house anymore. There is something bigger happening behind the scenes. And you are right in the middle of it. My dear friend, that was the moment I knew my battle was not just personal. It was much bigger, much deeper, much more dangerous. The morning of the hearing arrived with a quiet sun rising over Winter Haven. I could feel the tension in the air before I even stepped outside. Birds chirped nervously. Neighbors whispered softly to one another. And in my chest, my heart pounded like a drum, steady but filled with anticipation. I dressed carefully. Simple clothes, comfortable shoes, and my favorite scarf, one my husband had given me decades ago. It reminded me of strength. It reminded me of love. It reminded me that I had survived storms before, and I could survive this one too. I walked slowly to the courthouse, holding my bag tightly. Inside were my papers, the survey, the zoning laws, Reddick's documents, and my notes from the library. Each one was a piece of truth, each one a shield, each one a weapon against the injustice I faced. When I arrived, the building felt huge and cold. Its walls were gray, its windows tall and stern. I could see people filing in and out. Lawyers in suits whispered to clients. Clerks typed quickly. And in the center, the courtroom doors opened, waiting for me to step inside. My dear friend, have you ever felt like your whole life was leading up to one single moment? This was that moment for me. Inside the courtroom, everything smelled like old wood and polished floors. The air was tense. And there he was, Higgins Rowe, standing tall, confident, looking as though he already believed he had won. His lawyer sat beside him, flipping through papers like they were unbreakable shields. But my dear friend, they did not know what I had. They did not know who was on my side. They did not know the truth waiting in my hands. I took a deep breath and walked forward. The judge looked at me with kind but serious eyes. "Good morning," she said. "Please state your case." I nodded, my hands shaking slightly, and began. "My name is Marlene Whittaker," I said softly but firmly. "I am 92 years old. I have lived in this home for over 30 years. Last month, I received an eviction notice from my landlord, Higgins Rowe, claiming a rent increase that I cannot pay." The courtroom murmured softly. I held up the documents. "But there is more," I continued. "My home sits on land protected by historical zoning laws. My landlord did not follow the proper legal process. He did not give 90 days notice. He ignored laws designed to protect senior tenants, and I have proof." I handed the judge the papers. The old survey, Reddick's documents, the county zoning letters. Everything lined up perfectly. The lawyer representing Higgins stood quickly, his voice sharp. "Your Honor," he said, "this is an elderly woman exaggerating legal codes. She cannot understand the proper process. The landlord is within his rights to adjust rent." I looked at him calmly. I felt no fear. "Your Honor," I said, "I have studied the law. I have verified each document. My landlord's claims are false. His actions violate both the zoning rules and tenant protection laws. I am asking this court to dismiss the eviction notice and uphold my right to remain in my home." The courtroom was quiet. Even Higgins seemed taken aback. He had never expected an elderly tenant to come prepared, to study law, to fight with facts instead of fear. The judge took her time, reading through the documents carefully. I watched her eyes move across the pages, saw her nod slightly, and felt a small spark of hope. Then it happened. The lawyer for Higgins tried to introduce another document, a supposed updated property claim that could challenge the historical zoning. I asked calmly, "Your Honor, may I review this document before any action is taken?" The judge allowed it. I held it in my hands, and something immediately jumped out at me. A mistake. A tiny but fatal mistake. A missing signature. A wrong date. A falsified claim. I pointed it out carefully. "Your Honor," I said, "this document is invalid. It cannot be used against me. My landlord knew this and attempted to intimidate me with a false claim." The courtroom went silent. Even Higgins, lawyer, could not speak. The judge leaned back. She looked at me. Her eyes were sharp, calm, and full of respect. "I will need to review everything carefully," she said. "But from what I see so far, The tenant appears to have substantial evidence supporting her case. I exhaled slowly, but my heart still raced. The battle was not over. I knew Higgins would not give up easily. Then, as I prepared to leave the courtroom for the day, Reddick appeared at my side. He whispered, "Be ready. Higgins may try one more trick. He knows I am testifying and he is desperate." My dear friend, I realized the fight was bigger than I thought. It was not just about rent. It was about courage. It was about standing up when others expected me to surrender. It was about showing that wisdom and patience, even at 92, could defeat arrogance and greed. That night I sat at my table, surrounded by the papers, the survey, the zoning letters, and Reddick's documents. I knew one thing: the next day I had to be ready for anything. And just as I was about to go to bed, I heard a soft, deliberate knock on my door. Not fast, not rushed, but firm. And I knew. The morning of the second day of the hearing arrived cold and gray. The kind of morning where the sun seems to be hiding behind the clouds and every shadow feels longer than it should. But inside me, something warm had begun to grow: hope. I put on my favorite scarf, the one my husband gave me long ago, and held my bag with the papers close. Today, I would not just defend my home. Today, I would stand for every senior who had ever been silenced, every elderly tenant who had been threatened, every person who had been underestimated because of age. The courthouse was already buzzing when I arrived. People whispered quietly. Lawyers shuffled papers. The air smelled of polished wood and determination. I walked inside with slow, steady steps. My hands no longer trembled. My heart no longer raced with fear. I carried calmness like armor. Higgins was already there, his face pale, his confidence shaken. His lawyer had that same sharp expression, but it looked forced now, almost nervous. I took a deep breath and walked into the courtroom. The judge looked up and nodded, as if she could see the courage in my eyes. The hearing began. Higgins' lawyer tried again, bringing up new claims and documents, but I was ready. Every time they spoke, I countered with facts, surveys, county zoning laws, historical protections, witness statements, Reddick's testimony ready in the wings. The room was tense. The air felt thick with expectation. At one point, Higgins himself stood. His voice, which usually carried authority, now sounded shaky. "Marlene," he said, "you do not understand the law. You cannot win this." I looked at him calmly, softly. "Sir," I said, "I understand the law. I have studied it. I know my rights. And I will not surrender my home to someone who believes age makes me weak." The courtroom went silent. Even the judge paused. Then it was time. Reddick stepped forward. He was calm, steady, and truthful. His words carried the weight of years of honesty and courage. He explained the historical protection of the property, how Higgins had ignored zoning laws, and how the eviction notice violated tenant protection rules. He confirmed that the documents were genuine, and that every paper in my hands was correct and lawful. Higgins' face turned red. His lawyer tried to interrupt, but the judge firmly said, "No interruptions. Let the witness speak." My dear friend, I felt like I could finally breathe. The truth was speaking louder than fear. The law was on my side. and courage was stronger than greed. Then the judge leaned forward, looking directly at Higgins. "Mr. Rowe," she said, "do you have any lawful justification to evict this tenant, considering the historical protection and senior tenant rights?" Higgins' voice faltered. He stammered. He tried to speak, but the evidence was too strong. The papers, the witnesses, the clear violations. There was no argument left. The courtroom held its breath. And then, the judge spoke words I will never forget. After reviewing all documents and hearing the testimonies, the eviction notice is dismissed. The tenant, Marlene Whittaker, has the right to remain in her home. Case dismissed. My dear friend. For a moment, everything stopped. I felt tears fill my eyes. Not tears of fear, not tears of sadness. Tears of justice. Tears of triumph. Tears of peace. The courtroom erupted quietly in murmurs. Some people whispered congratulations, others stared in shock. Higgins' face fell. His arrogance crumbled. He turned and walked away, humiliated, defeated, powerless. I stood there for a moment, absorbing it all, every struggle, every long night, every fear, every betrayal, every small win that led to this moment. And my dear friend, I realized something important. Courage is not loud. Courage is quiet. Courage is steady. Courage is knowing the truth and standing by it, even when the world doubts you. I hugged Reddick. I thanked him with tears. I thought of Aveline, who had warned me even after betraying me once. I thought of my husband, whose documents had guided me from beyond, and I whispered to myself, I did it. I stood, I stayed, I won. The courtroom emptied slowly. I walked out into the sunlight. It felt warm on my skin. The small town of Winter Haven seemed brighter, calmer, as if it had been waiting for this moment of justice. Neighbors came by later, some bringing flowers, some just offering kind words. I smiled and thanked them. And as I returned home, I opened the door and stepped inside my small bungalow. I looked around at my home, the place that held decades of memories. Every corner, every crack, every little window mine. Safe, protected, loved. My dear friend, this victory was not just for me. It was for every elder who feels small. Every person who feels unheard. Every human being who has ever been underestimated. But even as I celebrated, I knew life would continue to bring challenges. Life would continue to test courage. Life would continue to offer moments to stand strong. And I was ready. Because now I knew. Strength is peaceful. Strength is powerful. And strength can win against anyone. My dear friend, I woke up the morning after the courtroom victory with the sun streaming softly through my window. For the first time in months, the house felt truly quiet. Not empty, not lonely, but calm, peaceful, safe, my home. I walked slowly through every room, touching the walls gently. Each corner held memories. Each window held years of sunsets. Each floorboard carried stories of laughter, love, and sometimes tears. And I realized, this victory was more than a legal win. It was a life lesson. It was proof that even at 92, one can fight with wisdom, patience, and courage. My dear friend, let me tell you the truth about life. People may underestimate you. People may threaten you. People may betray you. But the strongest weapon you have is inside you. Your mind. Your heart. Your courage. I thought of Reddick, who risked everything to help me. I thought of Aveline, who, despite her mistake, chose to warn me. I thought of my husband, whose careful planning guided me even from the past. And I thought of myself. Every long night I studied the law, every small mistake I corrected, every tear I allowed myself to cry, it all led here. The town of Winter Haven now knew that Higgins Rowe could not take what did not belong to him. The law and truth had triumphed, and in that moment I felt unstoppable. But victory, my dear friend, is not about revenge. It is not about shouting or fighting. It is about peace. It is about knowing that what is right cannot be broken by fear or greed. I spent that afternoon sitting on my porch, sipping tea, listening to the birds, and thinking about the lessons I learned. 1. Never underestimate yourself. Age does not limit your strength. Wisdom is stronger than fear. 2. Knowledge is power. Even small research, small effort can change your life. 3. Courage is quiet. Standing peacefully yet firmly is more powerful than anger. 4. Forgiveness is freedom. Even those who betrayed or hurt you can return with honesty. Choosing peace does not mean weakness. 5. Small allies matter. Friends, strangers, or helpers, anyone willing to stand with you can tip the balance of justice. I also thought about all the elderly people struggling silently, all the women and men who feel ignored, unheard, and powerless. My story, my fight is proof. You can be heard. You can win. You can stay strong. As the sun set over Winter Haven, painting the sky with gold and pink, I whispered softly to myself, "This house is mine. My life is mine. My story is mine. And it will always be protected, not because of anger, not because of revenge, but because of truth, courage, and peace." And my dear friend, I want you to know something important. You are never too old. You are never too small. You are never powerless. Stand for yourself. Study your truth. Fight quietly but firmly. And even in the darkest moments, hope will find you. Now, my dear friend, if you have watched this story all the way through, please subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories like this.